The KUDZUKIAN Network presents RIFFIN on Jazz with your host, Howard Robertson and Malvin Massey.
Sonny Rollins.
You got to improve, man. You got Coltrane and Ornette Coleman and these boys coming up. You better get your stuff together.
Mr. Miles Davis.
White people are funny. In America, they thought that I just woke up one morning and had the blues and started playing the trumpet. But it don't go like that, and you can't explain that to them.
Miles was able to make something that was wrong into something that was right.
Now they know. I'm not an accident.
RIFFIN on Jazz.
Welcome to RIFFIN on Jazz. I'm Howard Robertson.
And I'm Malvin Massey.
And RIFFIN on Jazz is your weekly visit with friends, talking about the music that we love.
It's that classic African-American art form called jazz.
We are back again. Malvin.
Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, man. You looking cool today.
Oh, yeah, I got my shades
Fly
on.
today.
They actually did my eyes up, so I had to put my shades on.
Okay. They did your eyes. They were legally done this time.
Yeah, it wasn't from illegal or anything like that.
We are riffing on Jazz Goats 2. That's 2, T-O-O or T-W-O as you prefer. The greatest jazz labels of all time is what we're talking about today. And we're going to start at the beginning of the alphabet with A's. And A is for Atlantic.
A label that we mentioned quite prolifically when we talked about Aretha Franklin and Ray Charles.
That's exactly right. But we're going to start out with one of their all-time best jazz artists. His name is Dr. Billy Taylor.
That's one for fun, Dr. Billy Taylor.
Yes.
Man, had the smoothest fingers on the keys, man. I got a chance to meet him when he came here to Memphis to play at the Ellis Auditorium.
Right.
It's a long time ago.
Right. Yeah, he was very, very smooth. He was very, very educated, too.
Yeah, pianist,
well
composer, broadcaster, educator, all those good things. He was on that Atlantic label. They seemed like they caught the real people.
They really did, and in the scheme of things, Atlantic was founded rather late. Atlantic wasn't founded until 1947 by Ahmet Ertegun and Herb Abramson. And they had an ear for talent, an eye and an ear for talent. They started out with Aretha Franklin.
Ray Charles.
They started out with, and then they had a distribution deal with Stax.
That was interesting. What they say, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, Wilson Pickett, Sam and Dave,
Sam and Dave, and Otis Redding. Yeah. They did the distribution for Stax, but they were tremendous company. Had tremendous success. Ahmet Ertegun and his brother were children of privilege. They were the sons of Turkey's first ambassador to the U.S. And when they got here with a collection, Malvin, check this out. They got here with a collection of well over 15,078 records. That's how into American music they were when they came to
into the jazz. Yeah.
So it's quite something. They built an empire. The empire that we came to know as Atlantic Records.
Yeah. Abramson had started off as an A&R manager at National Records, and he signed Billy Eckstine to National Records. He was one of those cats that he had his own experience. Ertegun was well, like you said, he and his brother, they were really into the music big time.
Definitely.
Went on and bought that label.
So they had
$10,000.
Billy Eckstine, Big Joe Turner. They had all kinds of people. And then Ray Charles. And then Ray Charles, as people know from seeing the movie, had a really, really sweet deal with Atlantic. So from there, we're going to go to another GOAT, another great jazz label, and that would be Mercury. You're going to hear Bohemia After Dark, which is by a cat that could really play. His name is Zoot Sims. tenor player, Zoot Sims.
Oh, yeah.
Zoot could play, man. People don't know about Zoot Sims.
He could play.
What, did he have a bad PR cat or what?
He just wasn't in there. I mean, that was from a CD called That Old Feeling Volume 4, by the way. That one was when Zoot was recording 1956.
How come Zoot didn't get his just due?
He played with the Woody Herman band.
Okay.
And there's a lot of other cats that worked with him. He was a band member. He was
that's why he's just a band member.
He was a band member until he really broke out and started recording on his own, and a lot of that had to do with Mercury Records.
Right. Now, Mercury was formed and founded in Chicago in 1945 by Irving Green and Burl Adams. They were a major force in jazz and blues and classical music. Now, all of these record companies, Malvin, had this strategy and this character and these personalities. So Mercury initially, their main thing that they revolved around was crooners. They signed a bunch of crooners. They had Frankie Lane. They had Vic Damone. They had Tony Fontaine. They had Patti Page. You see where I'm going?
Yeah, they had these singers.
They had these singers, these crooners. And initially, here's what their business strategy was. Rather than rely on radio airplay, which a lot of record companies hung their hats on, they had to have radio airplay. You know what Mercury decided they were going to do? Where they were going to get their exposures and their plays? Jukeboxes.
All right, we mentioned that a little while ago.
Right. And we mentioned the fact that we probably needed to explain most what jukeboxes are. Jukeboxes are these boxes in public places and restaurants and clubs and whatnot that you put money in and you play records. Right?
That's right.
And so Mercury.
Used to be in every joint.
That's exactly right. Every joint. Literally. And that's how Mercury decided that they were going to establish themselves and their acts to the American public. And we're going to transition from Mercury to the Prestige label. And we're going to get into this. You like this guy.
Oh, yeah.
This guy.
Man.
He's going to play a cut called Sister Sadie. Tell him his name.
Charles Earland. Before Joey D, there was Charles Earland. soul organ. It was Charles Earland.
That's it.
Yeah, Sister Sadie. Now, that's a classic track, Sister Sadie. And that was from his CD, Cooking with the Mighty Burner. He put out in 99. It's like you said, Charles Earland was one of those cats that was, he was a soul jazz.
And he's from where again?
Philadelphia. Isn't that the truth? All the great organ players.
What is it with organists in Philly?
I have no idea. But you know what labels he was on? He was on Prestige, he was on Muse, he was on Mercury, he was on Columbia, he was on Milestone. And when you say that, even though we're talking about Prestige label that he was on, all these labels tie themselves together.
Yes.
They buy each other out and they make subsidiaries.
They were very incestuous, and Prestige had Gene Ammons, they had John Coltrane, they had Miles Davis, they had Stan Getz, they had Wardell Gray, they had Monk and Sonny Rollins. So just to name a few.
They started off in 49.
Yes. So Malvin.
Yeah.
You got a glass over there?
Yeah.
It's got something in it.
Yeah,
tell people what's in it. What do you drink?
It's some red stuff. It's colored water. Oh no, this is the
red
original
colored water.
The original Smoking Loon Merlot 2015 vintage.
From where? California or France?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Or Alabama. L.A., Lower Alabama.
Yeah. Well.
So, we lift libations to life, love, and jazz here on RIFFIN on Jazz. And remember, make sure you check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, or your favorite podcast provider. And you can text RIFF. This is so simple, it's crazy. You can text RIFF, R-I-F-F, to 72,000 and get everything we got. You are listening to RIFFIN on Jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network. We're happy about it. We hope that you will stay with us because we're going to be right back after this.
We're riffing on jazz.
Funking up your airwaves and jamming the good information in your ear. Once again, it's Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
KUDZUKIAN.
Hey, this is saxophonist Kirk Whalum, and you're listening to Riffin' on Jazz, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Welcome back to Riffin' on Jazz. We are still riffing on Jazz Goats 2, T-O-O or T-W-O as you prefer, greatest of all time, jazz record labels, and Malvin. So everybody to this point that we have been talking about just happened to be headquartered on the East Coast, mostly in
New York.
All in New York.
Yeah,
okay.
New York.
So now we're going to talk about somebody that was on the left coast, and it played into, and you could hear it in the character of the music, because these cats were a lot cooler. They weren't as frenetic as the guys on the East Coast because they had that cool jazz thing.
Laid back sound.
Right.
And think about Paul Desmond.
And a lot of it had to do with the fact that they were in La La Land.
Yeah. Paul Desmond, Dave Brubeck, these cats, that was the Stan Kenton. That was the cool jazz revolution.
Yes, Jazz Crusaders. Les McCann. He was cool, but he cussed. He cussed, but he was cool. Wes Montgomery. Oh, man, how cooler can you get than Wes Montgomery?
Yeah.
So they were all on the Prestige label, which was, founded in 57. In 52. But and that was after all these New York cats had already got going. But in 57, they changed their name from Pacific Jazz Records to World Pacific Records to expand into, a full label of other genres as well. So
and they were more experimental than some of these other ones too. Some of the East Coast labels, because of this artist that's coming up with us. We're going to talk about a little bit about him on the way on the other side of the CD, this track, but he didn't have a piano in his band.
All right. With that, you need to introduce the next cut.
The one and only, Gerry Mulligan. This is Riffin on Jazz. Malvin and Howard Robertson here with you, and we are talking about Jazz Goats. That is the greatest jazz labels of all time, two. Yeah.
T-O-O or T-W, whichever you prefer.
And we just been dealing with West Coast cool. I love that. And that was Gerry Mulligan. And that was from the CD Pacific Jazz from 1952.
So we go back now from the cool of the West Coast to the
head on back to the East Coast.
Hectic, chaotic East Coast, where in 1942, Savoy Records was founded by a guy named Herman Lubinsky. Now, Herman was actually tremendous in the record business, but Malvin, Herman was widely despised.
They didn't like the man.
They didn't like Herman.
Was it because he was from New Jersey?
He was from Newark, New Jersey. And he had apparently that Newark, New Jersey hustle in him. Folk did not trust him. Now, Savoy Records was an all-purpose black label. Almost all their acts, if not all their acts, were black acts, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Some of these cats, Miles, Earl Garner, Dexter Gordon, J.J. Johnson, Charlie Parker,
Fats Navarro. Yes. Yeah. And they had R&B, they had gospel, and they had jazz. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, he wasn't known as the most fair person in the world. Everybody felt like they were being taken advantage of. From the record company standpoint, from a distribution standpoint, and from an airplay standpoint, apparently they were superior.
Yeah. He got more people, even though they hated him. He got more people on the recording. Known. Well, he got well known than almost anybody.
That's exactly right. And so after he died, which was in 1974, Clive Davis, who was managing Arista, bought the catalog. A few years later, he sold the catalog to Muse Records. And a few years after that, Muse spun off the gospel acts to Malaco Records that was based out of Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah.
And, the other artists went various places. So, I even think that part of the catalog was later fairly recently acquired by Concord Bicycle Music. But we are going to check out a cut from the Savoy label, from the Savoy years. And the cut, I'm going to have to explain to y'all what this is when we come back on the other side. The cut is called Scrapple from the Apple. That was called Scrapple from the Apple by Sonny Stitt. sitting in with the Oscar Peterson trio. So now I got to explain to you really, really quick what Scrapple is. Okay, those of you on the East Coast who are hearing this is old news. You know what Scrapple is, but Scrapple is quite literally just that. Scrapple is scraps that in the meat packing house that they take and they grind up and they put some seasoning and whatnot in it and they make this kind of sausage that is flat. And
I thought that's what sausage was.
That they cut in squares. Yeah, but sausage got more meat in it and whatnot. Scrapple, I think anything might be in the Scrapple. So Scrapple from the Apple is Scrapple from New York City. So that is it.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that.
That's all I can see. That's why you come here every week to learn.
Know it. So, well, wait, and speaking of people that are listening to us, where are we coming from?
Well, it's a beautiful thing, man. We always have great people like Lalo Garcia from Chicago.
And James Zucchi from Rome, Italy.
Linda Adedeo from Yoruba. Now, Yoruba, that would be like Benin or Nigeria, that section of Africa.
Oh, my girl, Kim KK is from there. And then Roman Steele from right here in Memphis, Tennessee.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're doing Jazz Goats, too. Greatest of all time here on Riffin' on Jazz. We got any other business to take care of?
I think we got to take care of.
Before we say, y'all stay tuned with more Riffin' on Jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network right after this.
It's Riffin' on Jazz.
3.
Am I going to sit there and argue with you over we had steak 2 days ago, I want chicken?
B.
I'm going to be spicy all the time. I don't care if I'm single or not.
C.
I think that the foundation is how you were brought up.
3 Black Chicks on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN.
Welcome back to Riffin' on Jazz. Greatest jazz labels of all times 2, the Jazz Goats. Getting into a label now that is legendary from the 70s and 80s and 90s. And it's no longer a label. It's sold out and everything. Dave Grusin, piano player, Larry Rosen, drummer, got together and put together a label called GRP.
GRP started in 1978. Now, the thing that was different about GRP is that GRP was founded and started by musicians.
Yeah.
Okay? These are the guys that we're talking about, by and large, were businessmen. Now, of course, they had an interest in music and an affinity for music and all of that, but they weren't musicians. These cats were musicians.
Working
musicians. So the character and the spirit and the style of the acts and artists on GRP were a little different.
Yeah, and they were sort of like they were the fusion label that really brought it out after the 70s pop thing and everything happened. They were the label that, look at the people that were on GRP. Anybody that was a smooth jazz person at the time.
Let's name them together. Billy Cobham,
David Benoit,
Chick Corea,
Michael Brecker,
Kevin Eubanks,
John Patitucci,
Dizzy Gillespie,
the Rippingtons,
Arturo Sandoval,
Dave Ellington.
Those kinds of guys.
New York boys.
And yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, they had so many hits. They recorded so much music.
Oh yeah.
We are going to
Dave himself.
Dave Grusin, yes.
Yeah.
A cut called Power Wave. Power Wave. Dave Grusin.
I love that. It's progressive.
That's nice. That is nice. We are riffing on jazz. Goats. 2. T-O-O or T-W-O, the greatest of all time jazz record labels. And we've talked about a great many so far. And then we get to a young gun that was, that had only been around since 1972. Another New York City. Malvin, why are all of them New York City based?
I guess it's because that's where the ad agencies are.
Oh.
No, I ain't gonna say that. I'm not gonna say that. But I don't know.
Yeah, except for the West Coast stuff that we talked about. But this is called Muse. This is Muse, and Muse, started out in '78. As I said, started out in the late '70s. No, I'm sorry, early '70s, '72, in New York, and did some great work. We've got something coming up that you're gonna enjoy hearing. But Muse ended up being sold in '96 to 32 Jazz, and they repackaged and reissued a lot of the Muse recordings. And then in 2003, Savoy, there goes that name again, Herman Lupinski, that nobody liked. Savoy Jazz in 2003 acquired the rights to the Muse catalog. I told you these cats were very incestuous.
Yeah.
So
because even one we were talking about before, GRP, it ended up being a part of Muse. At least Muse Records ended up being a part of GRP.
We're going to get into something from the Muse label, and it's by the great James Moody. There I go. Moody's Mood for Love. Yeah, the one that was written for. And this is called Feeling It Together.
Yeah, now you mentioned Moody's Mood for Love, and everybody remembers him for that one. But that was Anthropology, a Charlie Parker tune from that Peeling It Together CD.
On Muse.
On Muse label.
So now we go back to the left coast for this last GOAT, greatest of all time jazz labels, Concord Jazz.
Yeah.
Concord Jazz. Named after the suburb of San Francisco, Concord, California.
I guess that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. It gives it a whole different feel. Bay Area. And it gives, I'm digging the sound and the attitude of the companies, the jazz record labels that came from the West Coast.
Yeah, and they all have the cool element to them. They were always experimental. Mm-hmm. And I won't say that like the avant-garde, hardcore avant-garde stuff. No. I mean they took jazz and took it from swing and took it from the hustle of the city to the laid back cool California.
Absolutely. Concord was created and established in 1973 by Carl Jefferson, who founded Concord Records. And it was, they had some really, really cool acts and names, including Art Blakey, Cannonball Adderley, our guy Stan Getz, Ray Brown, Rosemary Clooney, who was fantastic female singer. And recently, I say recently, the later ones were Chick Corea,
Ileani. Oh my goodness.
with her beautiful self, Kurt Elling. And so now it's Concord Bicycle Music, and they're still making hits. And we are going to go out with one of our favorites, man.
Yeah.
This is where we learn how to play together at a very young age. That's right. The cut is Sidewinder, and
Kingston, Jamaica born Monty Alexander.
You know what? If we were cheese, Malvin, they might call us aged.
And you know, if we were cars, they may call us classic. If we were wine, they may call us vintage.
But we call ourselves blessed and very highly favored to be with you here on Riffin' on Jazz. Y'all be good. We got to go. Y'all be good, be well, and please be back with us next week for more Riffin' on Jazz. I'm Howard Robertson.
I'm Malvin Massey.
And we're going to take you out of here with
the Sidewinder.
Riffin' on Jazz. Executive produced by KUDZUKIAN. Co-host by Howard Robertson and Malvin Massey Jr. Music curation by Howard and Malvin. And recorded at KUDZUKIAN Studios. Riffin' on Jazz. Part of the KUDZUKIAN Network.